going to make a secret recipe today, and you can maybe guess the secret recipe by the ingredients. Now, this typical recipe is not always considered a healthy one, so eat these in moderation. And the first ingredient is going to be some oats. Now, that is why this is a twist on this recipe, because it has oats in it, and normally this recipe doesn't have oats. Will you do the honors and put in the oats? Step 1, oats.
Done.
Step 2 is going to be flour. Oats and flour. What can you make with oats and flour? Good. Into the mixing bowl. Next, we have some baking soda. Not baking powder, but baking soda. And just a tiny bit. It's in this tiny spoon. Baking soda. In. Salt. You might be thinking, salt? What could be salty? Salt's going in. Next up, we have butter in our recipe. Now, the butter, you might have to use the spatula to kind of scoop it out, because butter is what's going to make our ingredients here moist and delicious. Something you'll like in the mysterious recipe. Yes, good. Butter. Next, we are going to be adding some oil. Now, this is canola oil, about 1/3 of a cup of canola oil. You can leave the spatula in there. We'll use that to stir everything around. Oil's going in next. Now we're getting into our wet ingredients. We have the dry, the baking soda, the flour, the oats. Then we have just a smidgen of vanilla that we've already measured out. Excellent. Vanilla. What are you thinking this recipe could be? Next, we're going with sugar. Must be sweet. Sugar, 1 egg going in next. I'm going to use the spatula to get all the sugar out. 1 egg coming in next. I feel like I'm on a cooking show. Oh yes, 1 egg. Here's a towel. I'll take that. No shells for us. And the final ingredient, you may suspect you know what this is, but the final ingredient will give it away. The final ingredient is
Chocolate chip cookies.
chocolate chips or chocolate chip cookies. Did you guess the recipe? Okay, now we're gonna stir them all up. Okay, here we go in our final taste test of the cookie versus the sprinkled cookie, and we'll see whose is better. Cheers.
Cheers.
Aiden is going for the Dunkin' Milk approach. Can't go wrong with the warm chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
It is delicious, and I can't really tell that there are oats in there for extra healthy, nutrient-rich.
Yeah.
Good? Now, for the sprinkled cookie.
Oh, that one was a lot better.
A lot better, he says. I can't tell the difference.
Has more chocolatey flavor to it.
They are both very delicious, and I highly recommend that you try some cookies today.
Put sprinkles on it.
With sprinkles. Scene. Welcome back, third graders. So happy to see you today. I wish I could see you anyway. Today we're still talking about measuring, but now we're not measuring money. We are going to actually be measuring temperature. So when you are measuring temperature, the hardest part about this is just reading the thermometer. The rest I think you will find very easy. So we are thinking all about measurement. Now we can measure in 2 ways, just like when we were measuring weight or volume. The 2 ways are customary and then the metric system. Now customary, where we live in the United States, that's measured in Fahrenheit, degrees in Fahrenheit. All over the rest of the world, they measure degrees in Celsius. So we're going to practice reading a thermometer. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you. And today when we're thinking about temperature, now there are a couple of different checkpoints that you can use to see how hot or cold something is. If you are boiling water, we know that that is very, very hot. And to boil water, that would be 100 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to move that part over here. 100 degrees. And now the opposite of boiling, that would be freezing, turning water into a solid, and that would be at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The difference here, Celsius and Fahrenheit, Celsius has a much easier kind of way to do this mentally, working with groups of 10, whereas in the United States, we use Fahrenheit, which doesn't have those groups of 10. So if we're thinking about the human body temperature, that would be 98.6. Now I have a couple of these left. Room temperature, which is not too hot or too cold, that would be 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, based on what we know here, there are a couple of things left. We have 0 degrees Celsius and we have 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So those have to go in these categories as well. So when I'm looking at really hot, boiling, and really cold, freezing, which one of these do you think would go with the freezing? 0 degrees Celsius, you're exactly right. That's what I mean in kind of the easier way to think about things in groups of 10. 212 degrees Fahrenheit then goes with boiling. Now 0 up to 100, that's completely frozen to completely boiling. 0 to 100 in Celsius is a little bit easier to think about than 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Those are not friendly numbers. They're not groups of 10, but that is how we calculate temperature in the United States. So now that we have some checkpoints along the way, we can figure out hot or cold while we're reading these thermometers. So on this first page here, you'll see this on your assignment. It says the temperature is, and then we have to type some degree in Fahrenheit. So a little tip I'm going to give you is to make the notes section down here a little smaller. And that way you'll be able to zoom in. Remember, you have this magnifying glass up here. And when you click, it makes it a little larger and a little easier to see. Now, before I click again and start typing, I'm going to deselect the zooming box so that way it doesn't get too big on me. And I can see that this temperature right here is right at the 60 mark. So it's a little cooler than room temperature, not too hot or too cold. So I'm going to type in 60 and degrees. That's what this circle means, degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I have read this thermometer. Now, that is actually pretty easy for you today. The fun part is going to be your final slide. So I'm going to go back, zoom back out here to fit my screen. And this slide is about Charlotte's Web. It says, look up the local weather. How does it compare to the fair weather in Charlotte's Web? So you are going to be finding the weather for this day in our system in May, and you're going to tell me what the weather is. You'll type it here. Then the fun part, you can choose one of these things to make a video as a meteorologist, or you can make a weather tracker on the next slide. The next slide in your presentation is a blank one, and so you'll be using that. See, here's our blank slide here. So you're going to first tell me about some temperatures. You're going to read some thermometers. Then you get to do a fun activity, if you choose to, related to Charlotte's Web, and that's what the blank slide is for. Don't forget about the I need help button. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you more about thermometers or weather or temperature. Bye. Have a good day.